So our first speaker this afternoon is Barbara Carr. She's been the executive director of the Erie County SPCA for 18 years, and that's in upstate New York. Under her direction, her organization has gone from a live release rate of 25% to 77% in 2010. And in 2010, the shelter adopted all of its healthy animals and 91% of its treatable animals, which is quite amazing. Barbara's leadership stimulated Maddie's Fund to give her a $1.5 million grant so far. Please welcome Barbara Carr.
Well, good afternoon. Are you all going to stay awake after having lunch? Before I start this, I just never leave Buffalo without trying to change the attitude in the world about Buffalo, New York. So what do you think of when you think of Buffalo? Snow, yeah. Snow or chicken wings, right? I mean, yuck. It really, I feel like I'm not just an ambassador for animals, but I want to be an ambassador for Buffalo. It's really a lovely place. The other thing that I want you to know about Buffalo is I think it's the most animal-friendly place in the world. I've been impressed every year of the 18 years, 4 days, and 7 hours that I've worked there with what a great community I have and how I could hardly have done anything without their fabulous support. So, name of this is Getting to the Treatables, How One Community Saves 65% of the treatable cats and dogs in 1 year. Now, when we're talking about the community, in our Maddie's Pet Rescue Project in Erie County, we have other partners other than the Erie County SPCA. We have 4 adoption guarantee groups, and we have a municipal animal shelter for the city of Buffalo. And just to show you what a poor place it is, our municipal shelter falls under the garbage department, okay? So most of the people who work in the city animal shelter are garbage men who got into trouble picking up garbage, and so they are punished and sent to the animal shelter. Even with that, we're still at this point, so I'm very pleased to say that. So it's been a step-by-step approach. Certainly we've taken planning and patience. We've really relied on good public relations, active development team, plenty of volunteers, a non-micromanaging board. That's one of the reasons I love Buffalo. Yeah. Any of you have a micromanaging board? Yeah, tough. Good data, progressive veterinarians, access to low-cost sterilization programs, and the honesty that we've always used with the public and with ourselves. So let me tell you a little bit more about Erie County and Buffalo, New York. There are 920,000 people in our county. Our median household income is $47,000. 30% of our population lives below the poverty level. And the poverty level is for people $18,000. I don't know how one person lives on $18,000. So 30% of our population is living below that poverty line. And it's the 3rd poorest city of its size in the country. Don't ask me the first 2. I don't know. And this is sort of a snapshot of when we got our Maddie's Fund grant and what last year looked like. You can see that our intake has come down by about 7%. Our adoptions have gone up by 17%. Total euthanasia down by 22%. And our live release rate from 69 to 77%. That's the community. The euthanasia breakdown, in 2007, we euthanized 483 healthy animals in Buffalo. Since July 28, 2008, there has been no healthy animal euthanized in the entire community, not just the SPCA, but the entire community. Treatables, we euthanized 2,030 treatable animals, and last year 611 in the entire community. That's down 70%. And the unhealthy and untreatables is up about 6%. When you begin to lower your population of animals, many of you will already know this, the proportion of animals that come in who have real problems goes up. It's just a larger proportion of the animals that you're seeing because you're seeing fewer animals. You're seeing many fewer because of overpopulation who generally might be healthy. Here's our my shelter's data. We went from 13,934. We went down 5% in the 3 years. Our adoptions went up 5%. Total euthanasia down 17%. Healthy euthanasia down 100%, and our treatable euthanasia down 75%. So I think those are pretty incredible numbers to look at. So our early steps in this whole process, probably one of the first things that we did to begin to move our animals, get more adoptions, the whole notion was we had to get as many sterile animals into the community as possible, like mosquito control. And basically, as we know, people don't make a choice to get a cat. A cat's in front of them and they own a cat. And that's how 67% of the people who own cats because their cat was there. So if we're not putting cats in front of people and just waiting for them to come to our shelters, we're going to euthanize cats forever. We need to put our cats everywhere. When we started our first off-site adoption program, I actually reported on it here at the first or second Animal Care Expo. And I was practically booed off the stage. People thought that was just a terrible idea that I was putting cats in retail places. And now we have, the SPCA alone has 22 off-site locations. We needed good data to benchmark our progress. It's really hard to keep going if you can't see, what you're doing. And I'll tell you, when you're in the trenches and you're doing the work, it's hard to see if there's any improvement unless there's somebody keeping score for you. So when I go to my veterinary technicians or my adoption staff or what have you, and I share the data with them, you can just see their faces light up. So if you're not keeping good data, it's really, really important to do that, to be able to say, wow, look at the progress we've made. Or we're not making progress, and the data can maybe tell you why. You need to make sure that you're sterilizing all the cats and dogs leaving your facility. I hope you all have access to that. We've been really fortunate in Buffalo. We've had early age sterilization since 1987 at some level, and since 1995 for all shelter animals in the whole county. Being honest with the public. I can remember when I first went to the Erie County SPCA, and we had a public relations person there, and I heard a news reporter ask her something about euthanasia. She changed the subject. She didn't tell the truth. I can't remember exactly what she did. But after he left, I went into her office. I said, what was that about? And she said, well, I was told by the previous administrator, you don't want to talk about euthanasia, and you just pretend it doesn't happen. I was like, excuse me, but how exactly is the public supposed to help you if they don't know you have a problem? So from this point on, we will be honest. Every time anybody asks us a question, we want them to know what we're doing, because we want them to be as upset about it as we are, right? And we want their help. And I'll tell you, I've never gotten into any trouble being honest, ever. So I think that's really important to where we've gotten. And realizing the most important partner is your public. I think we still have way too many organizations who are saying we can't trust the public, we don't want them to have our animals, they're lousy, all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, there are a few of those folks, and it's hard to see when you have intake all the time from people who are surrendering their animals, that there's a whole world of wonderful people out there, just wonderful people waiting to help you. And so make sure you remember what an important partner they are. So I've already said all this. By adopting the cats all over the county that are sterilized instead of just close to our shelter, we really began to see the numbers come down, which really helps us out a lot. We have 22 off-site programs, and we're adopting about 1,500 cats alone at one location at a local mall. And a quarter of all the adoptions at the SPCA occur off-site in one way or another. So this cat is going to tell us a little bit about data. It's critical, as I said, for your benchmarking. You have to make sure that, and if you're looking to get a Maddie's grant, I'll tell you, if you don't have your data, you're not going to get the grant because they really want to be able to measure as well. And we were really fortunate that we had pretty good data, our shelter did, and we had to bring some of the other organizations along as we went for the Maddie's grant, but having our piece in order really helped the other organizations get their piece in order, in your community collaboration. So and it doesn't just help you with the Maddie's grant, but it helps you with all kinds of grants to be able to specifically say, this is where we are, I'm looking for money from you, and this is what I predict will happen if you give me the money. And we all do need the money, right? The more that people hear about your organization, the more adoptions, donations, volunteers, friends, credibility you're going to have. And it has to be ongoing. It can't, I'm really, really fortunate that I have a wonderful PR person, same person that was there when I came. And she's got us on every network television station. I think we're also on Fox. We're on 5 radio stations a week. And the media loves stories about animals, and if you can provide them consistent, honest information about the animals in your care, and it doesn't have to be just the nasty cruelty case. They want the happy stories as well. You're going to find that takes you a long way in getting your name out there and making sure that the public is right in step with what you're doing. We all started with the Pet of the Week in the paper. I don't even know if there's any place that has Pet of the Week in the paper anymore since everything is online and using the internet and all that sort of stuff. But you certainly want to use the internet and, as many of the local papers as you can get. If you have an advertiser or a bee or anything, get those animals into the public's eye. And all these things that I'm suggesting that you do are the things that are going to help you get to the point where you're going to be able to look at your treatable animals, not just your healthy animals. And it certainly takes lots of money to make progress. I think that boards of directors of shelters heavily rely on their executive directors to do everything. And you can tell them that I said, you need a development department, okay? And development departments will pay for themselves. It's really, really important to have somebody really concentrating and getting out there and getting the funds that you need to do your work. It's not really acceptable to expect the executive director to be the fundraiser, the humane educator, the cruelty investigator, and the kennel cleaner. You really need to find professionals and find ways for your board to make sure that these positions are funded, and it's really going to help you in the long run to have really a good development staff. Our public support with our development staff and our ability to tell the community, this is what we're doing, this is the progress we've made. We've gone from being able to raise in donations $1 million to $3.5 million in 10 years, which I think is pretty incredible in the second poorest city in the country. So again, public relations, honesty, and showing life-saving results is what really is going to bring you the support that you need. I think everybody has talked about how important volunteers are. We utilize volunteers, I think, every place in the shelter, and we have about 12 volunteers per staff member. So we are over 12,000 volunteers at this point who are doing just everything. I mean, they're working in the surgeries, they're fostering in their homes, they're helping file in the office, they're attending our fundraising events. They're doing everything that our staff does without making the staff nervous about their jobs. I mean, it's really fabulous. And it's a good thing to be able to tell your donors that when you give me $1, I turn it into 12 because we're supporting every staff member with 12 volunteers. And those volunteers, they have more credibility than you do. You're a paid staff member. The volunteers, when they go out and they tell the community great things are happening at the SPCA, people really listen to them. They really hear it, so you have wonderful ambassadors, and they protect your bottom line. Also, volunteer coordination is also not an add-on job. Tell your boards you need a volunteer coordinator. So many agencies that I've visited around the country, they'll say, well, we need volunteers, and they bring the volunteers, and then they have nothing for the volunteer to do because there's no program, no one to support that program, and they lose the volunteer. And then people say out in the community, well, I went to volunteer there, and they're always complaining they don't have this and that, but they had nothing for me to do. So volunteer coordination, the whole volunteer program is, if you look at it like a clock, you don't add volunteers till it's about 6 or 7 o'clock. There's a lot of work to do before you add your volunteers to your program. So all these things lead to the other. So all the things we've talked about really develop your supportive community. They add on to your adoptions. They diminish your euthanasia. They help develop your great reputation. They give you more financial support. Certainly, too, all these things add to having a happier staff. We all want to keep our staff. It takes a long time to train them, get them really, really good, and you don't want to lose them because they're not happy with the jobs. We want happy folks. You get volunteers lead to more volunteers, and all that leads to growth and the ability to do more in your community. We do a ton more than surrenders and adoptions. We have all kinds of programs, and I was talking at dinner last night with our co-presenters about what I see as our future, because I know we're all going to end the overpopulation problem in this country, and we'll still all have these organizations. And what are our plans for the future? What are we going to do? Some of the plans on the books for us are wildlife protection. I think there's 2 other SPCAs in the country that have a wildlife program. We've had ours for 10 years. I know that's the up-and-coming problem, and we want to be ready to be not reactive, but proactive in that area. I think we spent the entire 1900s being reactive to dog and cat problems, and that's why we had cities like Chicago that were getting 42,000 homeless animals in at one time, because we were so busy reacting that we could never be proactive. And so I think that for this century, it's up to all of us to look to the future and be proactive and know what's coming down the pike and get ready for it. And all those other things allow you the freedom to dream and look at what the issues are going to be out in the future. So again, we're talking about saving treatable animals, and a lot of people have asked me, how did you do that? And a lot of it, even though I've talked about planning and being ready and knowing what your problems are, a lot of it is simply the attitude to just do it. Just say, oh, all right, I'll try and put a 12-year-old dog up for adoption and see what happens. It's never going to get a home. But guess what? Trying it makes me not know what I'm talking about. And then the next time I do know that the 12-year-old dog or the blind cat or whatever can, in fact, get out of the shelter and get out alive and have a lovely, wonderful life. At times it seems almost ridiculous what we are asked to do when we haven't done it in the past. And then it seems like, well, why did I not know that? What was going on in my head that I wasn't letting this thought in? So I'm inviting all of you who have not tried on some of your treatable animals or your manageable animals or your healthy animals who you just don't think are adoptable, give it a try. You're going to be surprised. Again, I think that in the years where I believed that the public was the enemy rather than my partner, I didn't trust that they would help out with the blind dog or the old cat. But you know what? They do. It's simply amazing what happens if you just do it. So I'm going to talk about some programs I never thought I would do. Free adoptions. I mean, when I first started in this field, the last thing I ever wanted to see was a sign that said free kittens or free puppies. I would pull over on the side of the road and pretend I was somebody else and say, oh, I'll take all of them. You know, I just hated seeing those signs. So the idea of somebody who was letting their animal have a mistake litter of puppies or kittens, and the SPCA encouraging adoptions by having no adoption fee, those are really two different things. But in my mind, free was free. It said that animals were at risk. And I never thought that I would do free adoptions. But as we headed down this road, and we had gotten to the point where we weren't euthanizing healthy cats, I could hardly believe that. But in order to do so, I noticed that our shelter was really getting crowded and we were causing other problems for the cats in our care because we had too many cats in there. And I looked at that, I looked at the data, I looked at how long they were staying, and I heard somebody talk about free adoptions and how it assisted them in lowering the number of care days of an animal in the shelter. So in this slide, well, the first thing we did it free one weekend, okay? And with no kind of thought to it, we were just full. We said, well, we'll give away cats and kittens this weekend and see what happens. My staff almost killed me because we did 310 free adoptions in like 48 hours. And they were furious. I mean, they were just like, they couldn't believe it. And there wasn't any thought to it, and we didn't have any program for follow-up, and we didn't do anything. We just made them free, which I'm not suggesting that you do. But we did find that it did increase adoptions, 310 in 48 hours. I mean, unbelievable. So after that, we started looking at it, and we started putting some rules into it, and we did a lot of follow-up. And it's sort of interesting because one of the things that I've found is that people don't come in and say, oh, I'll take that cat because it's free. What they do is they say, why doesn't this cat have an adoption fee? And then when the counselor or the volunteer says, well, you know, we felt that Fluffy just couldn't compete with that 8-week-old kitten because the public, you know, they see Fluffy and they see the kitten and they always take the kitten and poor Fluffy has to sit here. And the person who probably, without hearing that, would have picked the kitten says, are you kidding me? People won't take that perfectly wonderful adult cat? Well, I will, okay? There's something about cats and the ability for the person who is adopting them to feel like they are saving them that is very important. It's why, with 67% of people taking in cats that are before them, it's why their rate of relinquishment is lower than cats that are planned for. The element of feeling like you've saved this animal is a bonding situation. And we know that there's a bonding problem between owners and cats because we get so many cats in that are 4 and 5 years old, and why hasn't that bond occurred? They're 6 or 7 years old. Why hasn't that bond occurred? So I've really been surprised by dropping the adoption fee on cats. What, again, I've found out from the public is that they will rise to the occasion. And they will bond with this cat that can't compete with the kitten faster than they will bond with the cat. So what happened? We made this our policy in December of 2009, and I've put up the first year statistics, and overall we saved 14,000 care days in the first year. This slide is based on all cats a year and over who were adopted, okay? So 14,000 care days. I expect it's something that more than paid for the loss of the adoption fees. So in reality, what did it mean? It meant 50 more cats over 3 adopted in the first year. And that was in a year where we saw a 7% decrease in cat adoptions overall. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit better figure than it at first appears. But I'm glad we did it for those 50 cats over 3. And just doing that lowered everybody's rate of stay. And we do rechecks on the cats 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months. I believe their return rate is lower, as our off-site adoption return rate is lower than our shelter adoption rate. So, interesting. Another thing I never thought I would do, forming a coalition. I just can't believe how much we all hate each other sometimes. I think we set out about 6 years ago to try and form a coalition. The reason that we did it was that we wanted to get the help of the folks who have set up the spay-neuter programs around the country. Kathy, are you still in the audience? No. We needed all the organizations within a 60-mile radius to get along in order for them to come and help us. So we actually worked with a facilitator for over a year to learn how to talk to one another and get along, but it was well worth it, because then the second thing we did was start applying for the Maddie's Fund grant. It kind of all brought us together. Now we're all partners. It was a very, very difficult process, so worthwhile. Don't give up on one another. You're all wonderful people, and it'll all work out in the end. You know, you will find strengths in your partners that you don't have. Earlier today, someone was talking about dogs that have skin diseases, chronic skin diseases, and I believe it was the retired vet who said there are organizations all over the country who will transport these animals to their facilities. I mean, we have such cooperation going on now. I think it's really important to work on not just forming local coalitions, but as many coalitions as you can to get to all the animals. Once I believed feral cats lived the most miserable lives, and it was a kindness to euthanize them. Somebody challenged me on it, thank God. And I brought in all these people, and I thought, you know, in Buffalo, New York, you know, not only do they live miserable lives, but they all die in the winter because they're plowed into the snowbanks. So, I mean, really, or underneath dumpsters, they get trapped, you know, and I figured they just, you know, that's how they died, and I was challenged on it, so I invited people from all northern climates that were running feral cat programs to come and talk to all the people who were running animal programs in my community. And, you know, I listened to them, and I found out again I was just a dope, and I didn't know anything. And we started looking at the feral cats that were coming to us, and lo and behold, these were feral cats with no known caretaker. 72% of them were healthy. We couldn't find anything wrong with them. They didn't even have parasites, you know. Their teeth were great, their coats were great, they were just doing fine on their own. So I went to the board and I said, you know, I think that we helped get a feral cat program started, and we refuse to take feral cats. Feral cats are the only animal that our shelter refuses to take. We'll take an elephant, but I won't take in a feral cat. They will be referred to Feral Cat Focus, or we will help them get their feral cat sterilized. And in our Maddie's Pet Rescue Project, they believed in the wisdom of that and supported the sterilization of feral cats through our Maddie's grant. So it's just been a wonderful thing. And, you know, before we had that, at our shelter, another way that we supported the whole feral cat notion was that we gave over our spay-neuter suite for the weekends, and then the feral cat people could come in and run their own programs, and it was wonderful to watch. But again, 15 years ago, I hate to say 10, But certainly 15 years ago, I would have thought this was a ridiculous thing and that I would never do it. Treating URI. Certainly it was once a reason for euthanasia at our shelter. As a matter of fact, when we started bringing down the number of cats, instead of the cats always going up, it finally got to the point where the number of cats was going down, and I looked at the two reasons that we were euthanizing cats that I felt we could do something about right away. And one was URI, and today we're treating over 500 cases annually in the shelter. I don't know how many in foster care. The other was the house cat that would come to us that was so fractious and so crazy that we couldn't put it up for adoption because we didn't have any place to cool it down. And this was before the days of group housing for cats, and I did a lot of study on what could calm these cats down because I wanted to be able to help them. And I did a lot of research, and I found that people were saying that you could calm cats down, you could keep them in a community room, and if they had so many square feet each. And so I built this room, and my staff called it Crazy Barbara's Cool Down Cat Room because they totally did not believe that we could put unrelated cats in the same room and that they would be okay. And as a matter of fact, the first two cats that went in that room, and it's called, by the way, Chillin' Village. It's not called Crazy Barbara's Cool Down Cat Room. My staff, the first two cats that came in, they were black and white, and they put them in that room. And the big joke around the shelter was, what's black and white and red all over Crazy Barbara's Cool Down Cat Room, because they were sure they would kill each other. And the next morning they had to go in and walk into the room to go and feed and clean up for the cats. And the cats came and were rubbing against their legs, and they, again, had to admit I was right, which they've gotten used to. So we took some dedicated space for our URIs, and we have dedicated staff and dedicated volunteers for enrichment. We found pretty quick on that we were treating these cats for URI, and by the time they came out of the URI room, they had to go in Crazy Barbara's Cool Down Cat Room because they were so nasty from just us shoving pills down their throats. So we have a great group of volunteers, the advocates, and they come in and they go in the room and they spend time with the cats, and then they go home. They gown up and they never go anyplace in the shelter. So I never thought we would be treating this many cases of URI, and I'm delighted that we are. Other things, old animals being adopted. Well, I have so many old animals at the shelter, and they all get homes. I mean, it's just amazing to me how many of them go. Blind animals being adopted, animals with manageable diseases. Who's going to take a cat that needs shots for diabetes? Well, it happens. And I never, ever thought I'd get a Maddie's Fund grant. And as a matter of fact, Maddie's told me, are you crazy? You're an open admission shelter, go away, for a number of years. And then they thought we were doing a pretty good job in Erie County. So, black Cattens. Do you know what I'm talking about? Any of you who are still just battling the cat thing know that the kittens get homes, right? And the adult cats get homes a little slower. But those black Cattens, the 4-month-old ones, man, oh man, are they tough, And they're always the last to be chosen. So when we did our first offsite, we only put black Cattens in the offsite. They weren't competing with anybody, and holy cow, didn't they get homes, and because there was no competition. And so that's how that was the first thing we did with offsites. And I'm sure you're all doing offsites now, but it's a good way for that poor little 4-month-old kitty to be noticed. They look like kittens if there's no one else around, right? So we heard about freedom a little earlier. I never thought I would see the day. As a matter of fact, I can remember when I would first read the Asilomar Accords, and I'd say, holy cow, someday somebody's going to say, you're going to have to find a dog that needs a cart a home to be considered, blah, blah, blah. I said, that's ridiculous, right? What? Here's freedom. It's a big-headed pit bull, nearly unable to use his back legs, will require a cart Is he adoptable? Yep. And we tried, and we found him a great home. And doesn't he look happy about that? I mean, he's about as pitty as they come, isn't he? But never thought we'd be there. Here's Mitzi, 11-year-old cat, chronic UTI, severe dental disease. We took care of everything, and she went home. And that's a great story for Mitzi. So, 2007, we had already gotten to the point where our euthanasia was down 70% since 2000, and that's when we applied for the Maddie's Fund grant. I thought that was pretty impressive. I'm talking right now not about the coalition, but about the SPCA. We average 375 medical treatments per month. In other words, 375 patients a month. 15 dentals per month, this was in 2008. 15 dentals per month. Today, we do 10 to 15 dentals a week. That's because we've got so many older animals up for adoption, and they all need dentistries before they go home. We opened the Mall Adoption Center, and the day we opened the Mall Adoption Center was the day we could say we would never have to euthanize another pet. And let me tell you how that happened. Remember when I was talking about honesty earlier? July of 2008, we hadn't euthanized a single healthy pet. And it had gotten to the point, I think it was July 28th, maybe it was 2007, I can't remember. We had to euthanize cats. We euthanized 4 of them. We just didn't have any more room. We'd finally hit that wall. There just was no other place. And it was killing my staff. They'd worked so hard all year long, and we had to euthanize these cats. And I called the newspaper, and I called a columnist there, and I asked him to come out, that I wanted him to do a story on the fact that the SPCA just euthanized some animals, and that we needed the help of the community to make sure this didn't continue. We were sick and tired of having to euthanize animals at the SPCA because we'd run out of options. And he came out, and the next day I got a phone call from somebody asking to see me. He came in and he said, I will give you lots of money if you don't euthanize any more animals. I said, well, it's not the money I need I need something else. And he said, well, how about if we rent a warehouse and you just put them in there, I was like, well, I know you're trying to save lives. That doesn't exactly sound right. Let me get back to you. So I thought about it all night, and I thought, well, if we're going to warehouse them, let's warehouse them at the mall and see what happens, And I called him back and I said, will you fund us to go into the mall? And we did. Our pilot project was 6 weeks, and it was so successful that we went back and opened it full time and got grants to do that. And so it's really been wonderful. And it's expensive. Okay, it costs a lot of money to run this. I need a staff out there. I need to pay the rent. And it's all driven through grants now, because I have something else I can ask people for money for that they can see, they can touch, and they can see the results. So don't think you can't do it. Third poorest city in the country. We are coming up in the world. So we also now, when we opened it full time, we started having all our partners have a cage. So the SPCA has most of the cages, but there is a cage for every single one of our partners. So they don't have to pay any rent, they don't have to pay any staff, they don't have to volunteer, they just have to get their cats there. That's all, and then we take care of everything else. So in 2009, Maddie's funded the Pet Rescue Project in Erie County, and we treated 87% of all the treatable and manageable cats and dogs at our SPCA, not the community, but just at our SPCA. And then in 2010, our SPCA reached 91% of the treatables and manageables. And in our community coalition, it was 65%. So we did it. So again, same thing, planning and patience, good public relations, active development team, plenty of volunteers, coalition building, good data, progressive veterinarians, very important, and access to low-cost sterilization services. I think that's it.